Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, June 28th. I am Montgomery County Council President Guido Bornos. It's a privilege to be here today. We're going to begin today's agenda with two important presentations. The first is a proclamation recognizing the Winston Churchill High School Boys Lacrosse State Championship team by Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Friedson, if you'll go up. Everybody who is here for that proclamation, please move forward to the front of the dais.
Well, I am so excited to be here today to recognize my high school, Churchill High School, my old coach, Coach Fritz, and the entire team for being the first Montgomery County Public High School to win a state championship. And thinking back through the journey of my family and this program and Coach Fritz and his family, it's just even more exciting and even more sweet. My cousin Josh, he came to Churchill from private school, and there was no Churchill lacrosse program in the late 1980s. My grandfather and uncle helped to create a club program there. Eventually, Coach Fritz showed up, thank goodness, in 1994, and ultimately led the Churchill program and all of Montgomery County to be a varsity sport for lacrosse. And I was able to play with all three of us, both my brothers, all three of us played for him. My brother Matt and I got to play on the first regional championship team in 2002. And back then, that was the pinnacle. Montgomery County Public School lacrosse teams to make it to the Final Four to compete for a state championship was the peak of what was expected of us. And then subsequent to that, to have built the program as Coach Fritz has, to play in 2 state championships and come awfully close, and now to finally to reach this point and this moment where we won a state championship for Montgomery County because of Coach Fritz, because of this incredible team. You brought a tremendous amount of pride to Montgomery County, a lot of excitement to me. Personally, I live streamed the game with my nephews and really was jumping up and down at every goal. And fortunately, there was a lot to celebrate. I'll say a lot more to celebrate than our regional semifinal game in 2002, but we won't get into that. But it's my privilege and honor to welcome you here. I'll read the presentation here in a moment, but I'd be happy to have you say a few words if you'd like to, Coach Fritz.
So thank you so much for recognizing us today. I'm so happy to bring that state championship both back to our community at Churchill and to Montgomery County. Could not be more proud, but we are still celebrating, so thank you very much.
Well, appreciate it. Mrs. Fritz is in the audience here somewhere. She's got the camera on. I see that. So wave to you. Mrs. Fritz had chocolate chip cookies that she baked for every single game of my high school career, freshman through senior year. And we went to present our Hall of Fame coach, Jeff Fritz, with a proclamation earlier in this season, quite a special season it's been, to hit 300 wins, the winningest coach in public school history, and now a state championship. And there was Mrs. Fritz running over with her baggie of cookies for me to take for the road, still many years later, not missing a beat. So appreciate that. And I think it speaks, I'll just say, to Coach Fritz and to the program. It really has been a family affair. And I've got to watch his kids grow. They were very little when I was there. Now they're grown. But your parents coming to every game, and my parents and our families getting to know each other so well, it's just part of what makes this so special. Not just what's happening on the field, but the growth of the players off the field. So congratulations. Let me read this proclamation of the Montgomery County Council. Whereas on May 26th, the Winston Churchill boys lacrosse team took home not only the first state lacrosse championship in Churchill High School history, but also the first in Montgomery County history in a 15-7 clincher. And whereas the illustrious coach Jeff Fritz began aspiring to win a state title in 2002, and the current state championship win builds upon the momentum, determination, and grit of the Bulldogs' trips to a championship game in 2015, 17, and 18. And whereas, led by Coach Fritz in his 29th season, he only looks 29, but this actually is his 29th season. The young men on the varsity boys lacrosse team were able to excel and once again make our region proud. We look forward to that legacy continuing as these young people grow to be wholly successful men and community members. And whereas Montgomery County is extremely proud of all the students on the team, their hard work, determination, and teamwork prove that they are worth the honorific of state champions. Congratulations to all for an amazing season. Head coach Jeff Fritz, team members, support networks, faculty, and the student body at Winston Churchill High School were integral guiding the team to victory through their unwavering support. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby congratulate the Winston Churchill Boys Lacrosse team and coaches on winning the 2022 MPSSAA Lacrosse 4A State Championship. And be it further resolved that the County Council is esteemed and humbled that we have these group of young men representing Montgomery County in the sport of lacrosse. Presented on this 28th day of June in the year 2022, signed by myself, proud alumni, Andrew Friedson, and Council President Gabe Albernos on behalf of the council. Congratulations. We're going to take a picture.
Congratulations. Probably not a good time to mention I'm a Whitman alum, but do appreciate and very much respect our friends at Churchill, and congratulations. All right, we now move on to our next presentation, which is a commemoration of Pride Month by Council Vice President Klass. He will be joined by the county executive, and I will now turn it over to him.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Pride. It has been a wonderful month of June, celebrating all throughout Montgomery County and the region. And as we continue to celebrate love and diversity here in Montgomery County, recognizing that we celebrate everybody, regardless of their gender identity, regardless of whom they love, how they identify. And the celebrations that we've been having have become even more poignant, especially after the news from the Supreme Court and the ruling and opinion by the majority of that court, in particular, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who undeniably wrote that he wants to repeal the rights of LGBTQ+ members across this country. The fights that we won at the ballot box for marriage equality, for respect, and for civil unions, he does not think should be enshrined in the Constitution. But we, here in Montgomery County and across Maryland, are committed to making sure that everybody feels welcome, safe, and loved in our diverse community. And that is one of the messages that we celebrate during Pride Month. And we will continue celebrating that, and we will continue doing everything we have to do here at the council, across the street in the executive branch, and with our partners across state government to make sure everybody is welcome and feels welcome here in our beautiful county and our beautiful state. And now I'll turn it over to County Executive Mark Elrich.
So thank you. And in regard to the previous thing, I'm an Einstein grad, so all of us are Montgomery County students at some point. I just want to thank Evan for the role you've played in this and raising the awareness and the prominence of this issue in the county. And I want to thank my Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Medellino, who 10 years ago co-sponsored the Civil Marriage Protection Act that led to this being the first state in the nation that supported marriage equality by popular vote. And I want to thank Tiffany Ward, who works as the Chief Equity Officer with us for the last 2 years. And I want to thank Dr. Amina Johnson, who is the county's first LGBTQ liaison. We've come a long way. And she is in the middle of an ambitious project to reach out to as many members of the community as possible and ask them to fill out an anonymous survey to get a better understanding of the LGBTQ needs in Montgomery County. So we are doing what we can do to learn more about the needs of the community so that we can take the appropriate steps at the executive level and the council level to ensure that everybody is equally protected here. And I go back to this issue in 1993 in Tacoma Park when we passed the first domestic partnership legislation. And we were probably among the first in the nation to do that. And we recognized the hardships that people had. This was brought to us in the context of visiting a loved one in the hospital, where a hospital could say that an LGBTQ partner was not actually a partner, and there wasn't a legal relationship, and you weren't part of a family. Or somebody's mother and father could say, this person's not allowed to come in here because they're not really part of a family. And so we recognized the family through civil action, and that enabled people to visit their loved ones when they were in a hospital. And from things like that have sprung an entire month of celebrating Pride. And I'm really glad to live in a county that does that. I think more and more people around the country are going to look, when people make decisions about where they want to live, they're going to look for places that are tolerant and welcoming. And that should be really good for Montgomery County. We should be able to be a shining light in this country. We should be able to bring more people here who want to be part of this. And I'm looking forward to the work we have yet to do.
Thank you very much, County Executive Elrich. And the light that shines, as you noted, will only continue to shine brighter because of the young people in our community who understand that the fight for civil rights and justice continue, and that fights that some of us might have litigated and won in the past need to continue being fought because others want to continue repealing them. And one of those individuals is Kimia Habzadeh. And Kimia is the winner of our Poetry Pride competition that we offered during this month to encourage youth voices, to make sure that individuals across Montgomery County share their stories and share their compassion for their fellow students. And Kimia is a rising sophomore at, drumroll, Churchill High School. It's Churchill Day here at the council. And she loves English and opportunities to read and write. And she learned about this contest from her counselor. And I think that's a really important note because it shows that we're communicating in our schools and that we're letting students know about opportunities and sharing with them ways that they can get engaged and ways that they can feel protected and share their support for their fellow classmates. And so Kimia is going to read her poem called Together Golden. And Kimia, I welcome you to the microphone.
Together golden. Left, right, up, down. A roller coaster of emotion amidst all the commotion, constantly sporting a frown. It was a tumultuous ride, feelings of isolation and a lack of general elation. I felt as though my hands were tied. Of togetherness I could only dream. The feeling, the connection, the emotion, the affection. Being alone was worse than I had seen. Yet I had a few ties that could hold me through, giving the desolate world more of a hue and lifting me to the skies. A close friend to turn to, though not eye to eye, stole from my lips a sigh and offered to get me through. If one hand that grasps another holds the weight of one's pain, a close circle would gain a wholeness that even hurt can't smother. No matter who you are or what differences you hold, together we are gold, unbreakable and going far.
There you go. Unbreakable and going far, and we are going far, and you and your peers are going to help lead us there. And so thank you for your heartfelt poem, and also thank you to Mom for being supportive and your unconditional love for Kimia and all of her friends as well. And so now I'd like to invite my colleagues down so we can read the proclamation for Pride Month.
I think you start. Yeah. Do you have it? Just read that. Right there. Okay. Yep.
All right. Whereas June is Pride Month, and this marks the 4th year that Montgomery County officially recognizes Pride as a time to celebrate love, inclusion, and the fight for civil rights and liberties. And
whereas this year Montgomery County raised the Progress flag, designed by Daniel Quasar, which expands upon the original rainbow flag by highlighting the Black, brown, and trans members of the LGBTQ+ community. And
whereas we recognize trailblazers of generations before us, like Marsha P. Johnson, who protested against police brutality after Stonewall. It is because of people like her who champion this fight for civil rights and help pave the way towards achieving full equality for all. And
whereas we celebrate the accomplishments and victories of the LGBTQ+ community, such as the 10th anniversary of marriage equality in Maryland, while highlighting the dangers of an activist Supreme Court reversing the hard-fought progress we have made in recent years. And
whereas LGBTQ+ residents are an active and important part of Montgomery County and contribute to the academic, political, economic, and social vibrancy of our community. And
whereas, like all society, the LGBTQ+ community is not homogenous, but diverse in its racial identity, age, immigration status, gender expression, religious belief, and socioeconomic standing. And whereas individuals who identify as LGBTQ+ are 40% more likely to experience homelessness, thus requiring us to create and support inclusive housing policies that address the diverse needs of this community. And
whereas the LGBTQ+ community and smaller municipalities within the county have organized parades, workshops, festivals, and many other activities to celebrate Pride Month and to uplift their LGBTQ+ neighbors. And
whereas Montgomery County reaffirms its commitment to supporting our non-binary and transgender residents, particularly Black trans women, who continue to face marginalization, discrimination, and violence. And
whereas an individual's sexual orientation, gender expression, or identity should never be a barrier to equal protection under the law, and civil rights for LGBTQ+ people is the embodiment of the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And whereas Montgomery County affirms our commitment to the full equality for the LGBTQ+ residents and applauds the efforts of our LGBTQ+ trailblazers, now, therefore, do we, the County Council, County Executive, everybody here, proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month. Congratulations, and let's keep celebrating.
all right, that was remarkable. Colleagues, we are ahead of schedule. And so we had designated a little bit more time this morning for those presentations. So why don't we take a 30-minute recess until 10 o'clock. We can grab a cup of coffee, and we will be back at 10. We would start earlier, but we've got a presentation at 10:05. Oh, Councilmember Fritz wants to.
Yeah, just a point of personal privilege. I appreciate it. We have two visitors with us today. Not a good time for us either to mention how many of us went to University of Maryland, the other UM, but we have two guests from University of Michigan who are studying political science and are here joining us today to see local government in action. So we can be on time and early and on budget so far. So good start, but welcome to Katie Song and also to Charlotte Dubin, who I will note is also a Churchill High School alumni. So it truly is Churchill Day here at the County Council. So welcome to our two guests and look forward to having you for the day. Thank you very much.
Yes, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. Another point of personal privilege. As chair of GO, I wanted to announce that voter registration and party affiliation deadline is today, and voters can text VOTE to 77788, and they can text VOTA in Spanish to the same number, 77788. Also, we need poll workers to apply. Text SERVE to 77788 or SERVIR in Spanish at that same number, 77788. Student volunteers, grades 6 to 12, are needed for Board of Elections Future Vote Initiative. For information, visit the Board of Elections website, 777vote.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. I was inspired by Councilman Fritz, and I have two middle schoolers here. One is my daughter Aaliyah Jawando in the back, and her friend Alexandra. So I just wanted to welcome them to their first council session.
Fantastic. Welcome to everybody today. We love having guests, and we will now take a quick recess until 10 o'clock. All right, we are going to go ahead and resume. If we could get a countdown, please.
Good morning. We are live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will now resume our council session for today, Tuesday, June 28th, and we resume with general business. Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda changes or announcements?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. We have a few brief announcements today. First, item number 5C, Bill 922, Property Tax Credit, Elderly Individuals and Retired Military Services Members Amendments is an expedited bill. Second, we have a correction to the consent calendar. The introduction of the special appropriations is to the county government's FY22 capital budgets, and the amendments are to the FY23-28 capital improvement program, Montgomery County Public School Technology Modernization, $2,077,854.96. The source of funds is federal E-rate reimbursements. The public hearing action for this will be scheduled for July 12th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. No petitions were received by the council this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There are no minutes for approval, and so we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation. This is regarding youth safety and positive youth development. For context, this council has been very aggressive in ensuring that the safety and security and wellness of our youth remains our highest priority. And I appreciate all the efforts of my colleagues, particularly these last 2.5 years, as we have dealt with the ramifications of the pandemic and all of the unique sets of challenges impacting our children, youth, and families. The development, thanks to Councilmember Novato's leadership with full support of the council, for the addition of wellness centers to all of our schools is a prime example of this council and this county's commitment. Having formally chaired the Positive Youth Development Initiative for 10 of 12 years in the previous administration, I know all too well the very intricate and challenging work that goes in every day between the coordination of not only the agencies we have before us, but also community activists, community-based organizations, faith-based leaders who are working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to help ensure the wellness of our children and youth. But we have seen a rise in violence. We have seen some alarming, very high-profile cases that we're all very familiar with, which have led to some concern about what the plans are for this summer. And I recall almost 10 years ago now, the summer in which the county actually considered a youth curfew because of the rise in violence that we had seen over a 1-month period. And unfortunately, there feels as though there are some parallels to that time. So we all thought it was important to receive a briefing today, and all of my colleagues are united in our interest in this topic, and so we decided to have this be before the full council. But I do want to thank everybody for your commitment. So we have two presentations that we're going to hear from at least this morning, and then after all the presentations are complete, my colleagues and I will have the opportunity to ask questions. But with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Stoddard and thank him for his leadership in this space as well.
Good morning, Council President Alvarez, members of the County Council. Appreciate you having us before you. As you said, Council President, this is an incredibly important topic and one that we've spent a lot of time collectively focused on. What you're going to hear about this morning is actually about a broad partnership. This is, we've got a number of partners that are involved. Some you see at the dais here, others you do not see, but they're out there working. I want to recognize, obviously, Mr. McCarthy is here from the State's Attorney's Office. We have collaboration from a number of community partners, such as the Collaboration Council and others. Community use of public facilities, council staff have been readily involved in some of these initiatives. What we've done is, in the recent weeks, we've established what we're calling the Youth Harm Intervention Team. It's based on the principles that we established the Opioid Intervention Team, and it partners very closely with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission to strategically, at a very high level, look at the resources that we have, help with targeting of specific functions and programming, and address the ongoing increase in youth violence and youth harm. What you're going to hear today is not an exhaustive list of all the youth programs. We would be here all day. I want to make that very clear. What you will hear is a lot about programs where we've modified the programs, targeted the programs, increased or enhanced the programs, or created new programs to address the imminent increase. And so just for every program you hear about today, there's 3 or 4 or 5 more that you're not going to hear about that are aimed at our youth in Montgomery County. And finally, what I will say is, before I transition over to talk a little bit about the data, we will continue to work, and we have a number of ideas that are just in their infancy. There is more work that will come. You will hear future updates. There will be more progress that has been made, and there will be more initiatives that are underway. And so this is not an exhaustive list even of the enhancements that we intend to do. There are some things that just aren't quite ready to talk about because we're still working out some details, but as the summer goes along, we'll have additional programs that we're ready to talk about. So with that, the first thing we're going to do is talk a bit about the data that has led to some of our ability to target some of these initiatives in key areas. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Jones to talk a bit about what the data and what we're seeing. Thank you.
Good morning. Good to see you all. I want to really share, which is in the packet, just as a brief overview of what we're seeing as crime of the youth violence throughout the county. And I just want to highlight that it's very disheartening because we've seen an incredible increase in the number of victims as well as the suspects in many of these shootings and in many of our investigations as 2022 has come upon us, and we're mid-year now. And I just want to share some really quick facts with you. So last year, of course, with homicides, in both the victim and the suspect category, particularly under the ages of 21, we have doubled the number of victims and suspects in our current year, half year here, 2022, compared to all of 2021. And so that's very disheartening. As you look at the homicides, you can see there is a map that we've highlighted, particularly with the age groups of the homicides that have occurred throughout the county. And we can see particularly disturbing is an area of Up County that we've had some significant cases. As we go to the non-fatal shootings, and when we say non-fatal, that means those are, we either have what we call contact shootings. That means shootings where we have a victim who's actually been struck by gunfire. And when you have a non-contact, of course, that's someone who has been shot at. And I wanted to make sure that there's a clear understanding. In some of the shootings that we actually have had issues with the victims themselves who fail to actually cooperate with us as the police by not explaining to us the circumstances in which they were shot, nor will they explain who actually shot them. And that happens whether we see that as a juvenile and we see it as young people. And many of the times what we know, as a matter of fact, this is a matter of them wanting retribution on those who they believe who did shoot at them. And therefore they take justice into their own hands, and therefore we have a string of shootings as a result thereof because of this ongoing battle based upon whatever the root cause or what is the issue behind this conflict. But again, we look at where the numbers are. Still disturbing is that we still see too many of our young people being shot. Here in 2022, we've had 10 thus far this year who have been shot 21 years and younger compared to 20 of last year. Again, our suspects, in some of these cases are still open, so we don't know particularly the true number of that as of yet. And then when you look at the non-contact shootings where we have particularly large numbers of contact shootings that occur all throughout the county, again, where we had 122 cases of last year, and currently this year we're already at 67, so we're clearly halfway through as well. And again, when you look at the map, I just want to make sure it's clear. We look at, and this is the areas that we, the police, have been targeting because we know these shootings are occurring in particular communities that we provide specific focus on and different strategies in order to address this with our commanders as well as our other specialized units in order to address that. And you can look at starting with Up County. You look at the Germantown communities as an example. We look at Crystal Rock Drive. That would be one of the top issues that we've had in the county. We look at Gaithersburg, Montgomery Village. We look at some areas in Aspen Hill. And we also look at Silver Spring. Not that we've had as many shootings are, in fact, in Silver Spring. And I'm cautious about ever saying things like this, but to this year we've had 0 homicides in the 3rd district, and that's a phenomenal number compared to, because it usually leads the stats traditionally over the past year. So I just want to highlight that. But again, we look at a lot of the incidents that occur. The majority of them are occurring in our residential communities, unfortunately, that we need to focus upon. And I'll turn this over to Dr. Kroll.
Good morning. Raymond Kroll, Director, Department of Health and Human Services. For the record, good to see you, President Albornoz, and members of the council. Glad to see you're all doing well, and hope Councilmember Katz, you're on the mend. Before I turn this over to Ms. Treadvance, I just wanted to note and underscore some things that Dr. Stoddard has mentioned here, is that the partnership and collaboration has always been strong in the county around issues of violence. Positive youth development has been in operation for many decades, but that under the current circumstances, we are seeing a need to step up and tighten up the game and to double down in some places to make sure that we are stronger. Okay, is that a little better? Just a little closer. Okay, sorry, thank you. Just to make sure that we are now looking at the numbers that Chief Jones just talked about, and so our goal now is to make sure that we are going to places and targeting places where those numbers are highest and where the risk seems greatest, but also we have 2 goals. One is short-term and one is long-term. The short-term one is to try to make sure we are doing things to promote peace and suppress the violence that we're experiencing now as we move into summer. But the longer term, and you'll hear Ms. Treadvance talk about this, is the intent to strategize about how we minimize the risk to younger children who are being pulled into this level of violence by older adults and older young adults and adults. The collaboration has incredible numbers of partners. By example of that, I think one of the things that's happening later this week is an Oak County meeting that will have over 70 partners sitting in the room to talk about what they're doing, where they're doing it, how they're doing it, what they're seeing in the community, and how we collectively coordinate our response. That's a level of coordination that is necessary at this point. It's not one that we have done in past years, but it is one that I think going forward we will do. We are supported by the funding and support that we've gotten from council over this past year for this budget to try to expand and grow things, grow our capacity to reach into the community, both in terms of mental health and in terms of outreach, our outreach network and team. We're also looking at expanding high school wellness centers, working on expanding high school wellness centers and working with MCPS to get that accomplished in time for the fall, and planning how we do other things like expand our capacity for the community to provide mental health services for us to provide mental health services in the community, and for the community hopefully to help itself in some respects. So, because this is not just a government operation, it is all hands on deck, including members of the community. So I think with that, I will stop in the interest of time and turn it over to Ms. Treadvance to talk you through how we're thinking about this, how it's framed out, and where we see where we see ourselves going in the next month, in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Kroll. Given what you all have heard, we have primarily 2 goals around this effort. The first one is what Dr. Kroll referenced, which is violence suppression and prevention over the summer of 2022. And our intention is to do this by saturating the communities with the highest spikes of violence with as much services and information and resources that we have to address some of the root causes that are leading to sort of these violent outcomes. that happen at the interpersonal level and also at the individual level with self-harm and self-injury. The second goal is to really build the capacity of adolescents, parents, the school community, and any stakeholders that interact with adolescents to build their capacity to better understand this issue, equip them with all of the resources that they need so that we can intervene early on. So these are our two main goals over the short term. The folks that we want to reach when it comes to the adolescent population, we're aiming to engage adolescents as young as 10 years old all the way up to 25 years old and up, because this is the range of the group that the data has demonstrated. And we want targeted programming, engagement, and interventions for the youth that don't engage in traditional programming. So these aren't the frequent youth that we see showing up to our programming and our services. We want to be able to target and reach the youth that don't necessarily walk through our doors, those youth that are difficult to engage. That's our target population. We also want to engage parents, educators, and any community stakeholders that interface with this population as well. Again, we, in terms of where we deploy resources, as Earl stated, it's a huge need that cuts across the whole county. However, we have a limited amount of resources and we need to be strategic with that. So over the summer, we're going to be focusing on the areas that Chief Jones primarily mentioned that have demonstrated with the data to have the highest needs and have been seeing the highest volumes of violent incidents. So that's Germantown, Montgomery Village, and others that you will see here referenced. Next slide, please. So in terms of action, here's a brief, a snapshot on what we're doing across various buckets, for lack of a better word. So in terms of prevention, we are going to be, sorry, if you could go back. Thank you. So we're going to have targeted redeployment of the Street Outreach Network, which we know it's boots on the ground, engaging youth, and they're going to be redeployed to these targeted communities where they already have a footprint. We're also exploring the idea of embedding a behavioral health staff member to be able to canvas with the Street Outreach Network at least one time a week during the summer to offer behavioral health support and education around overdose prevention as well. In terms of suicide and self-harm, which is one of the other pieces of violence that we have been seeing, we also want to explore the ability of being able to embed behavioral health clinicians to support summer programming services. As we know, the schools are very richly resourced with mental health supports and other resources. However, when the schools are shut down, we want to be able to bring these resources directly where the youth are. And in terms of substance use, we're going to really focus on co-locating resources and supports offered primarily by the Montgomery County Prevention Alliance, so that they can join some of the events that we have planned and also see community education efforts that they might be able to provide. Next slide, please. In terms of youth engagement, we know that engagement in athletic events has proven to be a really, really good tool to engage youth. So we are looking to expand partnerships with local youth nonprofits to increase engagement efforts around sports over the summer. We're looking at lockdown, apologies, there's a bit of a typo there, lockdown events, which are these overnight, late night sports events that convenes a whole host of youth across all ages to be able to engage them, their families, the surrounding community. We know that those have proven to be very effective in the past. And we're also exploring the idea of creating youth outreach groups. Which is groups comprised of actual adolescents where we hire them, give them some sort of stipend or some sort of compensation, and they're the ones going out having conversations with other youth, engaging them into resources and bringing them into some of our programming. There's also the youth community mental health training, which is being offered by Identity. We're exploring the idea of bringing in adolescent voices into that training program, offering the youth who participate, who are able to share their story, offering them some sort of stipend for their participation, and then also seeing if they could complete the whole certificate program to educate them on behavioral health issues and mitigation strategies. We're also exploring partnerships and programming with entities serving girls to increase offerings for adolescent girls, which tends to be a huge gap that we've noticed throughout this exercise. There's a lot of events, a lot of things, a lot of great programming, but very few that focuses really on targeting adolescent girls, which we most definitely cannot forget. And in addition to that, going to the second bucket, in terms of response, we're going to continue to host the community cool down meetings hosted by my great colleague, Luis Cardona and his team, which are quick and impromptu multi-stakeholder meetings following a violent incident where everybody comes together, shares data, shares information, addresses the issue and lessons learned so that we can move forward in the future and implement new strategies as we go along. There's also talks about putting together, Luis is coordinating the 90-day moratorium so that we can have a summer of peace. Mediation is also going to be something that is offered through the Street Outreach Network and other community-based partners whenever an incident does occur. Next slide, please. And then in terms of, we know that we need a significant amount of community events. We're going to continue to host the Peace Walk across all of our communities and the Summer of Peace. And we're also going to implement a series of community engagement efforts. And that's the resource mapping by geography so that as we go ahead and canvas and engage the community, we're able to put these resources on their hands so they can have at least a paper, a document, something where they know what's available to them. And that's to parents, that's to anybody we engage with, not just the adolescents as well. We're also going to continue to host the community safety roundtables to leverage that forum for ongoing planning and strategizing so that we could hear feedback directly from the community on how these efforts are going, what they would like to see differently, what is missing from our approach, because obviously having that touch to the community is beyond important and we don't want to lose that. And then, of course, ongoing engagement with our nonprofit organizations, and partners to continue to implement and plan interventions because we do this as a collective. And then the last bucket is capacity building. We could take the opportunity over the summer to really focus on engaging and building the capacity of stakeholders to be able to work with adolescents. So Collaboration Council has been amazing. They're looking to expand the Advancing Youth Development trainings for free, which is trainings for youth development practitioners and other partner agencies that focuses on the premises, principles, and practices of positive youth development, which we know is a huge component. As it was referenced earlier in the council session, it's been going on for years. But the practice is something that everybody, even the choir, needs practice, right? So there are principles to positive youth development that we could teach parents, we could continue to teach stakeholders, and just refreshers on what positive youth engagement looks like and how we could continue to build skill sets in our adolescents as we engage them so that they could continue to progress and thrive. And then the last piece is evaluation. Oftentimes in moments of rush and crisis, we tend to forget about evaluation and we have to fly the plane as we're building it. But here we have an opportunity that early on we could think about an evaluative component to see if these short-term strategies were able to be effective in reducing some of the violent outcomes, which we can cross-check with data from the prior years. And just also get feedback, both qualitative and quantitative data, which are critically important for us to know, especially if we're building this strategy over the long term. We have an opportunity to really be able to assess what we've done throughout this summer and see where we can continue to build over the long term. And then just some additional highlights. This is a bit more of a deeper dive on that piece that I referenced earlier about the Street Outreach Network. Again, they're going to be redeployed to the Up County. They've been engaging youth there for quite some time now, so that effort is going to continue. They're going to be also engaging gangs and, creating different activities to be able to engage them. That's boxing, youth summer camps, and series of outings and field trips. I do want to reference that the engagement of Street Outreach Network is not just for gangs, but this is also going to be one component that they're going to be focusing on over the summer as well. And then Safe Space Programming is also going to continue to meet with youth in Montgomery Village and Germantown area on Saturdays, on Saturday afternoons and evenings in the Gaithersburg Library. And after July 1, these meetings will be expanded to meet youth on Fridays as well. And that's it for me. That's on my end. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it over to my colleagues in Recreation.
Thank you, dear. Robin Riley with Director for Montgomery County Recreation. Thank you for the opportunity. Hope everyone's well today. I think for the Recreation Department, we connect very clearly with a lot of our partner agencies here at the table and some of our nonprofits. Quick snapshot about some of the things that we're doing. We make sure that we're looking at a continuum of services. So elementary, middle, and high school, creating bridges to each of those programs so kids, young people in our community stay connected and have a pathway to each one of those programs. Some examples of that we continue to do year-round as well as this summer is a youth employment program, TeenWorks. We try to engage 175 youth to give them meaningful employment opportunities, but also give them all of the fundamental core principles of employment that they need to be successful beyond our employment. Many of them stay engaged with us, become camp counselors, camp directors, and we have a young man proudly, I'm very proud of him, graduating from the Fire Academy this coming Friday, who was a student that came to us as a TeenWorks employee. William Flores is just an amazing young man. Other programs that we do are Soccer for Change. Councilmember Navarro was key in helping us implement that program. It's been tremendously successful, not just for young people, but helping us engage with community partners, Street Outreach Network, Identity Impact, many others, keeping young people and girls engaged. We have a large youth program now for young women to participate. That program has grown from, I think initially we had 6 young ladies, and I think we have 6 teams now. So it's awesome to see. That program also teaches young people not just soccer skills and giving them a meaningful experience around athletics, but they also have to do a community service project as part of their component, as well as attend school. That program continues throughout the summer to keep young people engaged and connected to us. The other program that we're sort of pivoting on this summer because of summer school is our mobile rec program. It's a summer camp where young people, both elementary and middle, can go to school in the morning from 8 to 1, and then we pick them up and we're there on site at the school. They don't even have to leave from 1 to 6 p.m. so that they're getting academic enrichment as well as a little bit of fun and nutrition, as well as creating meaningful relationships with caring adults. For us, we also this year will be expanding to rec zones in the fall, and we hope to partner with the Wellness Center at some of the up-county schools to really make connections there and expand our programming. I think that's kind of it for us. I mean, we obviously have the whole continuum from elementary to middle to high school year-round, and we expand that program during the summer months as well. And I think I'll throw it back to Dira to close out.
Actually, it's me. You get Sonia Mora, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. So pleasure to be here with you. I wanted to very briefly talk about the next steps that we're going to have in this process. But first of all, as you can see, there's been a significant amount of work that has been done in the past couple of months or 6 weeks. One piece that I don't think we have mentioned is that we have established a leadership steering committee that is comprised of the major departments that you see represented here. Down the road, also we will be including MCPS that will be part of this effort. So at this time, part of what we will be doing is finalizing the resource inventory. We talked about doing the asset mapping. Several organizations have been participating and providing information about the programs that they have, the locations where these programs are being held, and the target populations that they're serving. The other thing is to continue to convene partners at all different levels. We talk about the leadership level. We are talking about community-based organizations. We're talking about other stakeholders. I know that my colleague Greg Williams, in collaboration with HHS, has been having community conversations already. So this is a really important part of the effort, is really to bring the community to own, identify problems, and also seek solutions and participate in all the implementation pieces that we're going to have. That is absolutely important. So we will be continued to doing more coordination and integration, because as you can see, there's tremendous number of programs that were not even mentioned here, but it's going to be important to coordinate so that we can maximize our resources and avoid duplication of these. We will probably need new resources, and we will be coming to you to talk about what additional resources are going to be needed. So that's part of the effort. And obviously, we will continue to monitor progress. With the long-term planning, which should be starting pretty soon. Although we're delivering programming at this point, we need to start thinking about long-term programming, and that's going to start. And there are some ideas that we have that will include expansion of youth employment, looking at other models across the country that could do this, expanding the reach to middle school, not just high schools, but middle school. And we already talked about beginning to work with children at a younger age, 10 and above. Obviously working more with girls, because we cannot forget that girls are being affected by this situation. And then very importantly, continue to do community building, engagement, and mentoring. So I hope that this summary that we have provided today will be useful, and then we'll be ready for questions from you all. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize MCPS is here. I apologize.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here from MCPS, this opportunity. My name is Damon Monteleone. I'm currently Assistant Chief of Teaching, Learning, and Schools. I have with me here Mr. Everett Davis, Acting Associate Superintendent, Student Family Support and Engagement. I just want to say that the work that we've done to partner with county agencies, HHS, in addition to Montgomery County Police, has been strong, has been fruitful over the past years. As we've encountered continuous struggles. As we transition into this fiscal year, I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have in place currently as we speak with the Up-County Summer of Peace 2022 Crisis Intervention Framework, as well as the Street Outreach Network's Germantown Stop the Violence Peace Walk, and the Up-County Anti-Gun Violence Multi-Agency and Community Action Work Group. So we are actively engaged with folks from many offices in the county as of this moment. I'm going to briefly share many of the programs and services and supports that we both partner with outside agencies, nonprofits, different city agencies, as well as share some of the things that we do in MCPS over the summer to engage our youth academically and in terms of extracurriculars. So this will be very brief because, as was said earlier, I could be here all day speaking in detail. So first wanted to start off with our out-of-school time partnerships. MCPS is engaged with Arts on the Block. It's running a 6-week program, specifically in the eastern part of the county at Banneker and Eastern Middle School. We are also partnering with Maryland Soccerplex, which is providing $200,000 in scholarships for low-income students to engage with their services and programs over the summer. In addition to that, we have the Black Rock Center for the Arts, providing free and low-cost opportunities for our students. And then finally, with Montgomery County Parks and Recs at our Title I schools, providing the afternoon camps. So we're really excited about that. In partnership with the city of Gaithersburg, we are hosting programs with the city of Gaithersburg at Lakelands Park, Thurgood Marshall, Field Roads Elementary School, and with the city of Rockville at Bell, Meadow Hall, College Gardens, and Lakewood Elementary Schools. MCPS continues to engage our student leaders from across the district, hundreds of students in our student leadership activities. We have multiple events, including leadership nights and academies throughout the summer. And each of our 25 high schools has open training programs in preparation for the fall season with all of their student athletes that are run at the school site level. We're happy to continue to be able to provide free school lunches. There will be free meals that will be served at approximately 175 sites throughout the county every day. That began yesterday. All children 18 and younger, as well as persons with physical and mental disabilities, up to 21 years old, are eligible to receive these free meals. And walk-ins are available and open. So we really want to continue to be able to provide these basic services, these necessary service supports to the entire community. As we have in the past, we are running summer school. We have both a central summer school and local school programs. We have 34,295 students engaged in summer programs. These are running in morning and afternoon sessions. Some are in person at the local schools, some are virtual, and some are hybrid. With 17,316 elementary, English language learners, 7,851, 5,347 middle school students, 3,461 high school local students in high school local programs, and over 7,500 students in our central MCPS program. We're excited to continue the Summer Rise programs. This is a partnership with businesses, government agencies, higher education institutions, and nonprofit organizations across the district and across the county. Our juniors and seniors rising participate in career-based learning opportunities, internships. They get hands-on learning opportunities, engagement for the workforce, 50 hours of in-person, virtual, or combined experiences. We have 719 students in this program, 30% of whom are farm students who receive subsidized meals. We have 32% of the students are African American, 33% are Asian American, 16% Hispanic, 14% are white students. So we're really excited about continuing these partnerships with our agencies, grounding our students in the services that we provide each summer, and also very, very excited about the opportunity to engage at a strategic level with Earl Stoddard and his team in the events and the meetings and plannings that we have coming in the next several days. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Davis to talk about crisis intervention support in the summer.
So thank you. Thank you to Mr. Monteleone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to President Albornoz and to the rest of the council for allowing us to represent MCPS this morning. I just wanted to share as we frame a little bit. Number one, really want to look at, and I know you have received this information in your packet, but to frame this conversation around our Be Well 365 framework, which really speaks to the physical, social, and psychological well-being of all of our students, all of our staff, and all of our schools. And it's just important when we talk about Be Well 365, it's not 360, it's 365, meaning every day of the year. And so we're talking about the wellness throughout the summer and being proactive and not reactive to that. An example this weekend, just to highlight, you might be aware that we vaccinated over 1,000 of our students, of our upcoming students, I should say, 6 months to 5 years. Very excited about that. Thanks to Ms. Izzard, a member of our team, as well as to DHHS partners for making that happen. But just an example, again, of being proactive in this work, because we know that the needs of our students and staff, particularly when we talk about well-being, safety, and security, do not take a vacation even in the summer. So with that said, you can take a look here to further frame on the slide that you see in front of you. Those of you who work closely with students in schools understand that supporting students' needs requires a wide range of resources that are clear, visible, and accessible, and that address the varied needs of all students. It is imperative that these resources meet our students and families where they are, and that they are operationalized and brought to scale even during the summer in all of our schools. So as you can see in the slide here, we provide a tiered continuum of mental and emotional supports to our students and staff. This multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS as we refer to it as, is grounded in the understanding that these services that all students benefit from, that there are services that all students benefit from, as you can see on the bottom of the pyramid. But we know, in fact, that there is no panacea or a silver bullet. It's a differentiated pyramid, as you can see, starting with the Tier 1 at the bottom, essentials, universal essentials for all, Tier 2, targeted essentials, and Tier 3, intensive supports. Providing social, emotional, and mental health support in all schools requires multiple types of interventions at all of these three tiers. Having supports at all three tiers provides a comprehensive system of support that all students need. So for example, in our Tier 1 supports, you heard me mention the Be Well 365 Essentials. Those are there, as the name implies, provided supports to all of our students. In Tier 2, we're talking about supports that are aimed at 5 to 10% of our student population, and they're targeted for the additional needs and resources such as group counseling, working with our psychologists, social workers, and our school counselors who are available, and I'll speak about that in a little bit more, but are available 12-month, including during the summer. Students needing intensive support at Tier 3 may be referred to our community partners, some of which you see here represented at the table, such as our Linkages to Learning, working with our DHHS partners, wraparound services, and other community agencies. These students may receive, as it's mentioned in the slide, a functional behavioral assessment, as we refer to it as a FBA, or a behavioral intervention plan, also known as a BIP. And we're talking about 1 to 5% of our student population that will receive these intensive supports. Again, students that require targeted or intensive supports receive these supports as needed. And so again, I would refer you, just in the interest of time, to the packet to further the understanding of these supports that are available. There's an attachment towards the end of the packet which lists the school services by school. We are currently updating those. As you know, we continue to receive additional support, so we want to make sure that that is the most updated. But that is there for your reference, and it's also posted on our website as well. So to get into a little bit more specifics as I conclude, just to highlight several of the examples that were there in the packet. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. As Dr. Stoddard mentioned, we simply do not have time to do that. But I did want to highlight several that were listed there. One is the crisis support that Mr. Monteleone mentioned. We continue to have crisis support. As I said, the needs of our students and families do not take a vacation. And so we continue to have crisis support both at the school level as well as at the central office level. Dr. Potter, who is our crisis, he's a school psychologist, 12-month school psychologist, continues to manage that process for us at the central office level. Also, I mentioned our counselors. Although they are not 12-month, they do work 20 days in the summer, and so they continue to establish a rotation where there is coverage throughout the summer, particularly in our secondary schools, where we know some of our most elevated needs are. So that's important to know that for our families, that they can continue to reach out to the counselors throughout the summer. As well as our social workers, I know you all have been extremely supportive. I heard much about our social workers. We continue to build out that program with our 33 social workers, which we're so excited. We're going to have our kickoff this upcoming week with our social worker supervisor providing continued professional development, our 26 social workers that are school-based, as well as an additional 6 that are providing services and supports for our middle and also elementary schools, providing additional supports at the central level. So just excited that that continues to move forward and looking at referrals, suspension data, additional supports when I talked about that pyramid that can continue to support our students, as well as assessments that they'll continue working with the families that they began to work with during the school year. The last couple pieces I would address to just elevate for your information, our school psychologists. We do have a combination of 10 and also 12-month psychologists, but we're excited that we were given the allocation to have 30 additional 12-month psychologists so that we can continue, again, that theme that you've heard me say over and over again, that the well-being, safety, and security needs do not take a vacation. So we recognize that even though our 10-month psychologists are not technically on the clock, that those needs continue to move forward. And so we will have the 12-month psychologists to provide supports. And the last 2 pieces I would just elevate for your information. We have our student well-being teams, which I believe you've heard about previously. They exist in every single one of our schools. It's a combination of they started actually during the COVID pandemic and have continued because we've seen the value of those student well-being teams, particularly around attendance and engagement. They are comprised of a combination of 10 and 12-month employees, mostly 12-month, and so the work continues there with the staff from Student Family Support and Engagement, as well as with the administrative team providing continued supports. And then the last piece I would share around our parent community coordinators and also our ESOL transition counselors, or PCCs and ETCs. Thank you to the council for the appropriation to continue to provide supports. 12-month supports. Again, I want to emphasize that, particularly around our families. I know I've spoken about mostly our students, which, again, are our primary focus, but we recognize their needs for the families that continue throughout the summer as well. And so thank you again for that appropriation for us to be able to expand the services and supports that we provide throughout the district with that additional allocation. And so with that, I will turn it back over to President Albornoz.
Thank you all very much. So we've got a lot of colleagues that want to speak. Colleagues, we're going to go until 11:30 because we do have a lunch session today with representatives from MACo. I just have 2 quick questions, and then I'll go to the queue, which I will list in just a minute. But one of the new phenomena that we're seeing is a lot of the violence is being posted online immediately after some of these incidences are occurring, which then creates a ripple effect of fear and keeps this unfortunate, terrible incidents going. How are we handling those cases? How are we, I know that Luis Cardona, who has been all over this and working very diligently to help address these issues, but one of the things I've heard him comment on is the volume of these particular posts, and some of this is intended to create more fear and just further unrest even more. So could we talk a little bit about the strategy around how to handle those social media posts and what we're doing about them?
Well, from a police perspective, I would just state that we monitor social media in the public realm, and we are paying attention to whenever we have these types of violence and the ongoing threats. We try to be very proactive in the sense of if we are able to intervene from an investigative standpoint of creating an investigation that leads to further arrest, that we can intervene in a quick manner. Not always a given, depending upon who the players are, who the individuals are, who we have to clearly identify. I know, having talked to Mr. Cardona, we have noticed that there are individuals that are not even on their radar as potential, whether they are, some of them are not gang members. They are just simply individuals in our community who have decided that this is the way they communicate with others via the social media world, and there's a lot of threats going back and forth, and so it makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to identify those individuals that we've not come into contact with from that perspective. But we're working in partnership when we know that there's, for example, maybe a gang nexus there, that we might have the ability to take our gang unit that works hand in hand with Street Outreach Network, and they will sometimes create intervention strategies in order to be able to talk to the young people in order to be able to divert. I think there's one success story where one of the Street Outreach Network workers that I spoke to, Toriano Cross, gave me a great example of a success where an individual, actually a young man, turned a handgun in to him, who basically didn't want to be involved in sort of the environment anymore. So that's the strategy that hopefully we can continue to have some success stories such as that.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember, it's a good question. I think the challenge for us has been, obviously, when we know where there's an issue that is going on, we can respond to that. The problem is the spread, and just it makes it a little difficult to go upstream to try to do more prevention and promotion work than as opposed to responding to events. But one of the things that I know the team is doing is working on the conflict resolution issues, but the other piece is to identify younger kids who might be in the outer sphere of this and try to see what we can do to intervene with them in the community as well. Summer of Peace and Cool Down are cool down opportunities, are places where the Street Outreach Network can intervene with the community and try to dial it down to prevent retribution or retaliatory actions in the community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just last thought for now, and then we'll go into the queue, is, and this is a comment, not, I know we have to follow up on this, but while we have done, I think, a good job of trying to bring back a lot of the programs and support services that we had to postpone during the pandemic, I think the hours of operation at recreation facilities in particular is an opportunity that we need to go back to have them operate more often, 7 days a week, later into the evenings. I know the competition for space for programs is always very challenging, particularly in the summer, but I think that is, we need more safe places for youth to be able to go as close to their neighborhoods as possible, where they know there will be a caring adult, where they know, and parents know, that there will be some degree of, not necessarily a formal program, but just having a safe place for folks to go, I think, has value in it as well. So absolutely something we have to work through. All right, we got a lot of colleagues that want to speak. Colleagues, again, we're going to try to wrap this up by 11:30, and if necessary, continue the conversation at a later date. But I've got Councilmember Rice, followed by Councilmember Jawando, then Councilmember Navarro, then Councilmember Katz, then Councilmember Reamer, and then Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you all for your great work. There is no surprise that we have great things that are heading into this summer. I just have one question, and it's kind of a loaded one because we know that typically we're going to reach those same community members and those same families as we typically do. My concern is, and the Council President and I were talking about this with our Director of Recreation, there are so many outside community programs that have actually shut down because they can't find the staff members to actually provide those types of programs. So we're actually seeing less programming outside of county government than we typically would, which means there will be more reliance upon us to be able to give and support our community with these positive youth development opportunities. On top of that, we have always had a challenge with reaching those folks who are not necessarily always amenable to the types of positive youth development programming that we want folks to take advantage of. So it's a two-parter. One, are we prepared to handle additional reliance upon us for these programs, at both the school level, recreation level, across the board? And then, how are we doing outreach to those families who need to be more convinced that this is an option for their child, something that they should be a part of, versus just having the information out there and hoping that they'll avail themselves of these great programs?
I'll give it a shot. I think it's a great question. I mean, staffing is clearly an issue for all of us at this table. I think that's why it's key and critical that we collaborate with each other and really utilize all the resources that are available in county government, but also with our amazing community partners. I mean, Joe Hooks, Identity Impact, they do amazing work. And the more that we collaborate and connect, I think we can help deliver services. I think the other thing, I think parent engagement is a key element. I think we, as a department, probably need to do a much better job of connecting with families. And we've started that process with our after-school programs, doing a lot around parent engagement. But I think I heard it up here before, we have to find them where they are. And I think working with other partners, I heard Mr. Wims, who may or may not be here today, talk a lot about working with HOC and other community-based housing providers to really make those connections, faith-based groups. You know, good or bad, the pandemic has really helped us make connections that we might not otherwise have done. You know, great meetings with Cheers and others in the Long Branch community, really about finding ways to leverage all of our resources. That would be my answer.
I'm happy to chime in from MCPS's perspective. You know, we always stand by as a channel or a conduit to connect the services of the county with our families. And, you know, connecting our families and our students with, you know, positive youth engagement programs, summer activities, summer programs, or even programs, after-school programs, once school begins, can certainly be increasingly prioritized through our counselors, through our parent community coordinators, through our PPWs, through our ESOL transition counselors. We have people, boots on the ground, that connect directly with families. And ultimately, at the end of the day, as somebody who sat as a high school principal for 7 years in the district, the way to get families and students to buy in is with the personal connection. And so we do have the infrastructure to communicate this, and it is clearly an increasing priority. And so I certainly, like I said, stand by to be able to set future meetings or engagement opportunities to see what is available and then what resources and channels we have to bring those to our families.
Mm-hmm. So, Councilman Rice, I think it's a great question, and I think it is spot on, given all the things that are going on in the county. All of our providers, all of our community, even the folks that have not closed down are stretched thin, but willing to show up and try to do more. And that's been one of the positive, immediate positive things we've seen. We see it up county. I referenced that earlier in terms of the numbers of folks who are coming together for once to share what they have, when it's available, so that we know that and can convey that as a group to the community members and to the kids that we encounter, to the children that we encounter in the community. The staffing issues, I won't belabor. You know what the mental health staffing issues look like, and that's true across the entire country probably. But one of the things we're looking at now is how do we engage non-degreed professionals, non-degreed persons, community members, peer specialists, community health workers, to try to train folks who live and work in the communities to engage with the community, because they're the voices and they will be the trusted voices in the community, we think, going forward. We're obviously recruiting for Street Outreach Network and other programs as well, but that's going to take some time. I think that long term, our solution for a lot of this work is going to be how do we change the staffing structures in our programs to bring more people from the community in. As far as engaging youth, I would say that there is no magic solution to what works for engaging youth. It is a personal, one youth, one family at a time. My experience across several decades has been, if you give community, you give youth, you give families something that they need, then they'll listen and give you a chance to talk to them about something else that they need. So whether it's food, whether it's help with rental assistance or shelter, or those kinds of supports, or a rec program, creating those programs and giving them a chance to be there opens up an opportunity for us to engage them in a deeper way.
One more comment. Everyone's going to chime in. So last week we had a conversation with the municipal leaders about this topic, and a suggestion that came out of that meeting is there is capacity within some of the private sector camps to take on additional. And so what we're going to look at is potential for a stipend program, assuming that we can identify, part of the resource inventory is to look at some of those private sector opportunities. And if they're culturally competent and we think they're good programs, we may offer stipends and other ways to get, leverage. Because as we talk about resources, it's not dollars and cents most times. It's actually personnel, trauma-informed or trained personnel that are often the challenge. And so where the private camps and other opportunities offer additional capacity, we'll be looking at that as well.
So I just want to say thank you, and did just want to highlight that what MCPS said in terms of their outreach and using PPWs and PCCs and all that are fantastic ways. One of the other things that we also need to do is work with our HOAs. There's always the assumption that because it's a community that's more impoverished, that's more minority-based, that folks aren't interacting and engaging. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I know that Mr. Wims knows this all too well with Germantown Park Estates. I know that Dr. Kroll, you know this as well, and Chief, you know this. That's been an active HOA, and they're the conduit. Same thing with what happened over at Plumgar, in the Plumgar area. And those folks are engaged and they want to see things happen. And so I encourage us to utilize those resources as well to make sure. And I know that Street Outreach is doing some of that work. And I know that Mr. Cardona couldn't be here today, but just wanted to exalt some of the great work that's happening there too. Because I think that cohesively, all of those things, as you started off with, and us working together and communicating and saying, okay, this is the plan for how we're going to do that outreach, is going to help us to get to some of those harder to reach folks that we know need these services the most. Everyone needs it, but there are some who need it the most, and those are the ones, Chief, that you talked about, that unfortunately sometimes we end up locking up when it could be that we could be providing them programming instead and keeping them from going on that pathway. So I really appreciate everything that you said. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Mora. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, thank you. It is critical to know how to engage the youth, but it's even more important that they stay in the programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that some of the programs that we have need to be adapted to make sure that they fit the needs of this particular population, particularly those that are at highest risk. So I think that's going to be an additional piece that we're going to have to do.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate everyone being here and all your work and that's gone into this. Really, really important conversation, and we all have a role, obviously, and that's represented with this great group. Chief, I appreciate your update and obviously some disturbing trends in the increase of violence, particularly shootings. It's concentrated, right? As you described, in certain areas. And you mentioned that some of the victims are not communicating, right, with you and with your officers and saying what happened, and is that, would you say, and I'm not holding you to a hard and fast number here, but is that half of them, 75, like, is it a couple? Is that how often is that happening?
I mean, I wouldn't say it happens often, but it happens, enough that's still troubling, right? That when you have someone who's been shot at who does not provide you with basic information of facts and circumstances, whether the individuals show up, sometimes they show up at our hospitals.
Right.
Sometimes we find them in the location in which the event occurred. So I wouldn't put a hard number on it, but it's clearly not half. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's a quarter, but it's still enough that says that, when particularly if they're in areas where we've had issues before, right, it makes it harder for us as we try to really resolve these issues and try to be more proactive and prevent future incidents, versus really finding out who did that current incident.
And of the ones that you highlighted this year, how are we doing on like closure rates of finding out in light of what you just said? How are we doing as far as solving?
Yeah, we're starting to have some really positive. We're starting to be able to track with the evidence that we're recovering on scenes with shell casings. We've interacted with the NIBR system, which is a system where you actually put your shell casings in, and there's gun matches. But again, I think I've stated this before the council before, where we are finding that even in some of these incidents of gun violence, we're finding that they're not all Montgomery County centered. Right. They are regionally centered. But where we've had some success is tying cases to other jurisdictions and identifying individuals involved in those crimes where we have had some success. So when we look at sort of the closure rate, I probably would say we're probably in the 20 percentile, which is not great. But again, it all comes to, really all cases coming together. First, does the victim identify who's the shooter? And if that's not the case, then that's a lot of work for detectives to follow up on, chasing the evidence.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad you mentioned the regional point. I hosted a regional meeting with Council Chair Hawkins and Councilmember White, and this is one of the things we talked about, is like, how do all of our agencies, right, police, HHS, recreation, schools, come around and collaborate in a real meaningful way and share data. I know there's privacy concerns, but this is too important we have to find a way to work together around those things, employment, so that, because you said people are going in and out. My life, we all lived in different places at different point. You're searching affordable housing, you're trying to get the best school, all the reasons. And we have to have a better way to coordinate cross-system, not only tracking, the actual violent criminals, but also how do we provide the supports. And I started there because the communication and the identification, I'm so glad Councilmember Rice brought this up, like, of who folks are that are most at risk. We did a report, this is, 7, 8 years ago now, I think it was a community group on the disconnected youth in our community and who they were, and it was thousands of young people. This is this group of 16 to 24 that are not employed, not in school, that are most at risk for some of the behavior we've talked about based on the numbers. And there was a number identified, and I think there was, and we had talked about some strategies, and it kind of, fizzled and moved around, and things happened, and I think it's something we need to pick up again to really focus, because that is a really prime population. And some of the suggestions, for example, the Street Outreach Network, and I'm sorry Mr. Cardona couldn't be here, but I know HHS is represented well. That's something we need to have clear metrics and goals for, but massively increase the number of people, and we made some progress on that. But I think the folks that can get into the community, hired, that may have a record, that are not, that are going to know have these relationships in communities where we're seeing this hotbed of violence, we need to invest in that. I think we need to have more summer youth employment. We talked about Teamworks. You know, it's 175. We have to get that number up. We have to get the Summer Rise number up. We talked about earlier this week, I think in Educate, I can't remember, they're all coming together, but my colleagues and I talked about how do we have different types of programs, right? Summer Rise is more kind of career employment based, but how do we also just have employment based, like whatever the job is, you know, to get thousands of our students a job that pays, teaches them that they show up on time, all those things. DC does something like this where they're doing 15 to 20,000 students a summer. We're bigger than them, and we're doing a fraction of that. We have to, you know, we're not gonna get there this summer, but that's one of my goals, I think, is that we can ramp that up. The mediation and cool down events, I think, are really important, again, to identifying who these folks are. And then the sports, and this is specifically for you, all the sports folks, for you, you know, Robin, I think we need to convene a group of all the people who are involved in summer sports and all the programs, you know, we know these folks, and talk to them about, because what I find, and this was certainly me growing up, there's one or two kids that are there that are connected to the kids that we need to get, that know them. They might not be in the sports program, but they know them. Like I knew them, right? You know, the ones that are at risk. But how do we have that, like a round table with all those folks so they can talk and share in a free space? It's not to catch people, but just to know how we can support. And they might hear of things that are about to happen, and so that we can intervene in advance. I just think and I think, Sonia, you mentioned this, like this collaboration group that's together. I think that should be a part of it, like particularly because you think about how do you get these young people who are most at risk. And I'm gonna let you go. I know I'm rambling here, but I'm gonna let you go. But I think that's one real big avenue to get some of these folks. So some suggestions and ideas. We could talk about this all day. I'm very passionate about it, as are all of our colleagues. But I'll go ahead, Dr. Kroll, and let you guys respond, and then I'll pass it back to the president.
So just a quick thing, one of our colleagues, Elijah Wheeler, couldn't be with us today from Collaboration Council, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that one of the things that came out of the disconnected youth work was the Collaboration Council doing work to engage and outreach to the community, to those youth that you mentioned that are not in school and not working, and sometimes on the verge of being homeless and couch surfing from friend to friend.
Yeah, and the homeless center is a great example of
and
that.
They just cut the ribbon on that last week, I believe. The other piece of this is that PYD also does an incredible amount of work around positive youth development, training, and education across the community. So there's a resource out there that is doing that kind of work. When you talk about outcomes, one of the challenges from my perspective is we have a street outreach network that does an incredible amount of incredible work doing safety and doing work with folks. I think the challenge for us as a county and as a department is to figure out how do we go upstream and decrease the number of folks number of young people that are falling into the trap of gang violence, et cetera. And for that, I think Ms. Tredvance talks about root cause analysis a lot in her conversations, and I deeply appreciate that because I think we do have to look at what are the social consequences, what are the economic issues, what are the availability of weapons that are capable of killing people and maiming people. And as some of the root cause work that we have to do in the long run to understand and address that work, whether those issues, whether it is workforce, whether it is educational opportunities, or whether it is sports and recreational opportunities that need to rise. And then one thought, just a passing thought that I was reminded of when Dr. Stoddard talked about the municipalities was someone talked about a gaming competition. For us, for me, it was an opportunity to think differently about what it is that young people are engaged in. They're not all playing basketball or soccer, or swimming, but some of them might be interested in doing some of that work. So we've got to talk with the youth about what it is that will engage them and do some of that for them going forward.
Just one additional comment. So we actually last week requested the Council of Governments take a look at community or regional violence-focused summit, essentially, to try and discuss common practice, because we've seen several presentations, I'm sure we've seen across the board here, of some things that are being done innovatively in the region. I'll also note we had a presentation from folks out in San Francisco who are doing some really innovative stuff on how to coordinate service delivery to identify at youth risk. So they coordinate between their school system and their health and human service delivery to flag rapid increases in absenteeism, for example, as a precursor, saying we need to intervene in this young person's life now because they're showing signs that may be alarming for a potential, they maybe something's happening at home, or maybe they're contemplating something else that, you can intervene before there's a violent act or they're the victim of violence. And so there's some interesting coordinated approaches that have been done in San Francisco around, flagging for intervention, not necessarily for law enforcement intervention, for health and human service intervention, young people who may be at risk for violence. So there's some interesting things. We have actually talked about doing a regional trip at the National Capital Region, doing a regional trip out to San Francisco to try and learn more about some of these programs, because obviously we need to learn what we can about what's being successful across the country. Yes,
I'm glad you brought that up. Please keep me posted. The last thing I'll say is that I was with a young man over the weekend, 16 years old. His mom had pulled him out of Gaithersburg High School and put him in a boarding school because she was concerned about who he was being exposed to. And he's really into football, and he's going back this year as a junior. And they're really concerned. They were like, can you help us connect him to programs and services so that he doesn't, she's the mom of 4 boys, so that he doesn't get involved. And I talked to him about brothers. I talked about a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to get him linked up. But I think this parent engagement piece, so parents know what's available and that they can connect, to your point, of like this whole holistic early intervention set of supports is so important. And we just have to do more. And so I know you all live and breathe it, and you're doing it every day, and I appreciate it, and we're here to support you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Navarro, followed by Councilmember Katz, then Councilmember Reamer, and then Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone here for all your work and all the collaboration that has taken place up until now. And so I guess I just have a few questions so that I can understand a little bit more of context, which I'm sure our residents also would like to understand. Chief, do you feel that we are definitely going through what you might consider to be a crisis of sort? Is this something that is of such concern that requires an additional approach, an augmented approach to what we usually do, right, on the summers? Do you believe that that's where we are?
So I would say yes. And so for me, what I said a couple of months ago, and I think at a press conference, I said, this is a call to action when I know that I've got, and we've had younger people be involved in crimes of violence and having their hands on weapons, right? And we talk about guns primarily, where this is not our norm. And so when it's not our norm, it says to me that we need to do something different, because we need to identify these younger people that are much. And I'm seeing disturbing things on the internet. That really is disturbing when you see, young people who are posting on YouTube and Snapchat and Instagram, and they're showing these weapons, and they're showing, drugs and other things at an early age. And it says that how can we figure out a way of intervention? But I also have said, and I've stated this with Dr. McKnight, as we've talked about, some of the other strategies that we can maybe assist with when you're having social media beefs, right, or conflict, and you're going back and forth and threatening each other, and then the way you resolve it is you show up at a park and you pull out a gun to resolve it. So to me, yes, that says to me we have a problem. And so we have to figure out these new ways, and I think of augmenting it differently. How do we figure out these ways of intervention at an early pace? And whether we're doing it in the school setting, we're doing it in these camps, we're doing it at 3-on-3 basketball, for example, where not only we're having them play basketball, but we're having conversations with the kids. We're bringing in speakers and having them interact with individuals who know a little bit about sort of what conflict is all about. These are the things I think that we have to really broaden our horizon, right, and really focus on that, because I think it is a call to action.
And so do you believe that this is, and I think I know the answer to this, right? So yes, there is some concern because of the summer months.
Right.
But this is just not something that is going to happen, or that because we've been tracking this, right? And a lot of it, I think, has been exacerbated by what we just went through in terms of this pandemic, so we've been tracking all of this, right? And so that's why I'm curious about, you know, the presentation today and the conversation, right? As I'm leading the council, and I've been preaching forever the need for us to identify those models that really do work and commit to scaling them up, you know, because it is wonderful to say that we have, I don't know, you know, with our girls' sport, that we had, for example, an increase, you know, up to 16, you know, girls. But we know that that just doesn't even touch the universe, which is, I guess, the other question. Do we have a sense, you know, has anybody really thought about, like, okay, what is the universe here, right? Because if we're going to work backwards, you know, what knowing what we know geographically where this is happening, we know there's a trend, it's been a sustained trend, and we know roughly the population, right? And I'm just not talking about students, I'm also talking about parents, because we do need to do this very intense, you know, parental engagement that has to be culturally appropriate and all that. Do we have a sense of the universe, and how do we then, after we identify that, how do we fit that into the particular interventions and programs that we have been discussing today? Because when I hear everything, I've heard this before, right? So I'm thinking, oh, this is like the baseline things that we do. So where are we augmenting? And, you know, when are we going to, for example, acknowledge who we are in the circumstances? I'm glad that you're looking at San Francisco, right? We need to understand that there are best practices elsewhere. But I keep hearing about, you know, summer employment for these youth, right? Youth summer employment as being really, really critical. But we haven't scaled that up. You know, the type of parental engagement, given some of the circumstances in the community, I'm not sure we have scaled that up. Street Outreach Network, I mean, obviously, this is just something that I have felt very strongly about forever since I joined the county council, because I really feel that we keep talking about them as if it's just about gang intervention, but this is beyond. You know, you don't have to be a gang-involved kid or about to be involved to connect with one of these, you know, youth workers. The Street Outreach Network has figured out how to do. So I guess my question is, do we have a sense of the universe? You know, after this summer, is there a plan to augment in a sustainable way, in a scalable way, these best practices versus, you know, we have a baseline approach and then we're in a crisis, but where is the scalability? Because if not, I feel like we're literally just kind of setting ourselves up for, you know, the usual situation. And I'll be honest, I mean, I am very concerned because this time is different than any other time. Been in office since 2004, but it's different because the pandemic has come to do certain things. There is an absolute crisis at the border right now. I mean, just reading in San Antonio that just found a tractor, you know, a trailer with like 46 dead people. And so there's a confluence of issues that we're facing. And I'm just not really sure, like, do we have, you know, are we talking about that? So the scalability piece, has there been that conversation about the universe part of it, and how can we come together to put forth some things that might be, you know, real tangible, right? Like the Early Care and Education Initiative, I wanted to make sure that we had like some metrics because it had to be like a long-term thing so that we could institutionalize that. Is that conversation, you know, happening? Because all of you are doing amazing work. I just worry that the scale of this piece is going to be beyond the summer, and we just need to at least look at the scenarios and then come together and say, well, maybe we're going to have to push the envelope in this direction and in that direction and in that direction.
I'll start, and I know Ms. Tresvance will have comments on this. I see her hand up already. She talked a lot about this in the groups we've convened. So obviously what we talked a lot about today are the short term, meaning this summer we're focused on expanding some programming, some access, targeting in particular neighborhoods. But longer term, there's absolutely a conversation we have to have about expanding resources and better targeting those resources. So what we talked about with Councilmember Jawando is not only is it more resources, but it's making sure that the right kids end up in the resources that we provide. Because if we provide more resources and the right kids don't end up there, then we've missed the point. And so part of the work that we are engaged in over the summer, even as we do these short-term activities, is around how do we identify the most at-risk individuals in our community and give them priority and preference for all the programs and make sure that they have access to them, and also figuring out in each individual case through a case management approach, what is the bridge to get that young person engaged in the programs? Who do we need to outreach to them to get them involved? So absolutely, we are committed to a conversation, not even a conversation, we're committed to expanding resources, and we're committed to prioritizing the resources even as we expand them for those young people who are most at risk. That is absolutely a big part of this, and I think that we're absolutely committed to that conversation, even as we do these short-term things to address this specific summer. We know there's a whole host of conversations that have to continue through this summer and or into the fall and be ready for more and better programming as we move forward. I think Ms. Treadvance also has comments.
First and foremost, thank you so much, Councilmember Navarro. This is what I will miss, not having you on the council. You always have a fantastic Google snapshot view of the situation. But to that point, it's exactly what Earl said. It's getting a clear definition of who the youth we are trying to engage with, right? And these are systemically disenfranchised youth that are difficult to engage due to systemic inequities that puppeteer their behavior, right? So this is why we included an evaluative component, so that we could see, are these interventions even working? And when I say, are they working meaning that we're getting the youth that we intended to reach, and not just claiming success because we had a handful of youth, but did we get the right youth in the room? Did we get the right youth engaged? So I think defining the population we're trying to reach is very important, and then really, really focusing on building up our evaluative component to see if our programs are effective. And Sonia said a fantastic point earlier on. It's not just that, but it's also taking a step back and looking at our menu of services and ensuring that we are curating culturally acceptable programming that the youth want to walk into. So offering soccer, offering baseball, offering sports and programming that are part of the diverse cultures that make up and that these youth can identify with. So those are just the two things I wanted to say. I think the evaluation, I think it's very important for us to have that so that we could start building up a baseline and a foundation on how we evaluate our interventions and clearly defining the population we want to reach so that we're able to assess whether we were able to engage them in an effective way.
Thank you. I know we are short on time, but I will close by saying this. This conversation is about fiscal responsibility. Because it is about utilizing our resources strategically and knowing that they're having the impact that we desire. It's about equity, because if we don't figure out how to put forth the best interventions, we're not living up to that law. And also, I think it is about building on what has taken place before. We should not have to reinvent the wheel, to be honest. The Kennedy Cluster Project was envisioned to do just this, but it was never implemented at Fidelity, ever. And so we've done some of this work already. We've built the infrastructure for collaboration, for identifying those young people, et cetera. Let's just dust off some of the things that we have done and bring it up to today's, 2022, and strengthen that, right? Because there's already been a culture of collaboration that has been created. Not ideal, but that work has started. I think that's going to be really important because no doubt the resources will start to be really stressed because of a lot of conversation about the economy. But we have a lot already in place that we can leverage to address this because the need is definitely going to grow, and it is a great concern.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Councilwoman Navarro,
yes.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your continued presence over the years. Ms. Treadvance is right; you're going to be missed. When you talk about the sense of the universe around this and the scale of this, I'm almost don't know quite where to start. On one hand, it is the entire school age population of children, as you saw in terms of universal interventions. But there are really targeted areas in the community where we see things that are really, really heightened. But we also did, and I don't think it was in the deck today, but a summary of risk factors that contribute. And I think Ms. Treadvance has in a larger presentation a summary, an analysis of risk factors, whether it is poverty, racism, systemic abuse, bullying, suicidality, all those things factor in, and we have a sense of that. We have a sense of who's disconnected and how many folks are disconnected. So we have some ballpark sense of that. The interventions for us then have to be about how do we go upstream so that we're not just working from crisis to crisis all the time. That we're unfortunately working towards this summer is trying to figure out how do we get on top of, get caught up. But we have an opportunity to go ahead and do some work by pulling together the folks that you mentioned that have been doing this work for a very long time, and thinking about how we use them differently. And to Ms. Moore's point, figuring out how we make sure that we are funding and supporting things that are actually effective and changing the numbers of kids who are engaged in violent activities across the county.
Thank you. The geographic designation doesn't seem to change much. Back when I was a member of the Board of Education and the focus and non-focus school geographic areas were identified, that is still pretty much the case. And we saw it during the pandemic in terms of the zip codes. We've seen it in so many equity emphasis areas. It is that particular geographic area that you guys, I'm sure, are working with. So at least we have that data.
We have that.
Yeah.
One of the things that has always amazed me across my career is that you can put people, 20 people, 100 people in those geographic areas, and 80 of them will be fine. 10 of them will thrive,
Yeah.
and then there's a small percentage that are in trouble and challenged, and we're going to be struggling with. And the challenge for us now is to understand how you distinguish and figure out how do we stop any of that 80% from sliding over into those other percentages. And then how do we figure out what are the signals that indicate that we need to reach out and engage with someone and before they become disconnected or disenfranchised with society?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Katz, followed by Councilmember Reamer, then Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I know we are short on time, and I will try to keep my conversation short. And I wish I could be there in person, but for those of you interested, I'm feeling just fine. But I wanted to, as an abundance of caution, wait one more week before I actually came back to the council in person. First off, thank everyone who's been involved in this topic, and it's truly a concerning topic. And this is something that I would like to have more time to discuss it today. But as I say, I won't. But I know that this is going to take every resource that we have in Montgomery County to get ourselves to a better place. And it starts with mental health concerns, as all of you have mentioned. It's comforting to know that each of you is there in the variety of forms that you're there, and as well as our nonprofit community. You mentioned the Street Outreach Network, and I know that they save lives. I personally have seen Identity save lives, and this goes back years ago when Diego called me one night, and he knew and when I was mayor, and he knew to connect the city of Gaithersburg with resources so that he actually saved a life. I mean, I know that he directly saved a life that night. And so it takes someone who knows the community, who knows each person who's being involved in the community, to keep them involved so that we can get to that better place. And we're going to need short-term solutions on this as well as long-term. I'll go back to the city of Gaithersburg for 1 second, and I'll try my best to stop when talking about them. But years ago, when drugs really were on the rise, not to say that they're not now, but when they really were on the rise, and in some cases, our young people were emulating people who were to be so cool that they were being involved in drugs. The city went and we went to our private private sector, and we said, look, we want to do something that's very bold. We went into every elementary, every middle, and every high school in Gaithersburg. It was the county schools, obviously, but the ones that were in Gaithersburg. We gave out a T-shirt to every person. We called it a user is a loser program. We had speakers come in and have discussions so that the people, the young people involved in this, would hear directly from people who had gotten their lives, in some cases in terrible situations, had gotten their lives very, very confused and concerned, and had turned themselves around, and how they did it and how we need to do it. And I think we need to look at something like that again. Obviously, that's long term. We had better success when we started in elementary schools, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to connect and to do that. And I go back to when Councilmember Rice and Upper County Regional Director Wims and I were in Germantown for the rally to protect our neighborhoods. The parents were involved, students were involved, the public was involved, and the police were involved. It was a combination of everyone saying to work together so that we can get ourselves to that better situation. So I'll stop at that point for those backgrounds. But if I could ask, on the shooting incidents themselves, and you said that not all are gang involved. That means maybe some are. But on the shooting incidents that have occurred, does it involve drugs in those cases?
In some cases, they do, Councilmember Katz. When we talk about involving drugs, most of them that we see in most of these situations are drug related, or of the robbery type, where individuals are trying to rob one of its wares. So that's when we see that involved in shootings. We have seen a trend go up involving drugs over the last year and a half.
And I know we're right at 11:30, Council President, so I'm going to ask one last question. For the 90-day moratorium, and I think we're going to need to have a little deeper dive on what that means. But how do you decide on who do you talk to have a 90-day moratorium?
That's a great question. I think some of these where we have been able to identify some individuals who may possibly be involved in gun violence. You know, when we talk to a lot of young people, and we talk to a lot of adults as well, and we'll have conversation. When I say we, I'm talking about across government lines, not just here with the police department. But I know that the conversations that have been had, we'll ask individuals, why do they have guns? And they simply state, because we know everybody else has them. And so I need that to protect myself. So from there, we know that these individuals are more than likely carrying guns, or at least have the ability to get their hands on them. So I think for those that we've been able to have those conversations with, those will be the individuals that we're having that conversation to say if we can have some peace with the moratorium for the 90 days.
So our Street Outreach Network does some of that work in terms of engaging folks. You heard earlier Chief Jones talk about Toriano Cross and receiving a firearm from somebody. That's the result of a conversation and engaging people around not taking violent action and about taking a step in a different direction. So it is community by community, and where we know there are hot spots and groups that are potentially beefing, trying to figure out how we help them to step back from potential violent action and to find another way to resolve their beefs.
Thank you. And please, obviously, you are going to keep us involved, but the worst thing that could happen in this case, and I guess there's a lot of worse things, but one of the worst things that could happen in this case is if we could do something, but because we didn't have the resources to do it, we don't do it. And that would be a horrible problem. So please let us know if you need the resources, how you need the resources to let us be involved. And Mr. President, I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm past at 11:30, but I'm going to turn it back to you. But I do believe we need to have a continuing conversation on this. If it's not at full council, we certainly will do it at Public Safety Committee. Thank you very much, and thank you all for everything you do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. We are at 11:30, but this is obviously an important conversation, so we're going to keep going a little bit longer. Councilmember Reamer, followed by Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Council President, for convening this discussion today. I think it's really timely and important, and we've heard so many great presentations. I wanted to ask Ms. Treadvance, could you share again the slide that you provided about the short-term opportunities? There were some notations there about programming that you're presently building and the possibility for the need for additional resources. I just wanted to ask you to expand on that, and we could make sure that if those are resources that the council needs to provide, that we could understand that and be able to move forward, or if those are internal that you already have access to.
I think it's Sorry, I'm waiting for them to put the slide. One more, I think.
There.
Yes. So these are thank you so much for that question. I didn't really speak on it when I presented because I wanted to be efficient with the time. These are some new ideas that we've explored or expanding some ideas. We wanted to present them today, and we're still exploring their viability, and we're running estimates because they will require additional funding if we want to pursue expanding them or running some of these. So we are in the process after this of running some estimates so that we can have some sort of draft budget to be able to know what the additional costs will take. So that will just take a little bit of time for us to go back to the drawing board and really run those numbers to provide that.
Great. Well, I would certainly encourage you to send us a request as quickly as possible. We have few council opportunities. You know, we only meet once a week, and we are meeting next week, right? No, we're meeting the week after.
Councilmember Reamer, if I may. One of the things that we discussed is we think actually in many of these areas we have the existing appropriation authority beginning July 1st that would cover them, but what it would leave is a shortfall towards the end of the year. So we would have the opportunity to move them forward with spending with the recognition that we likely need to come for a supplemental to cover the back end of the fiscal year.
Okay, good. So not necessarily something that we need to take action on at the moment, but a general
correct. We thought
understanding
about that.
that we want you to be able to surge your resources and surge your programming. I hope you're including food. You know, I'm finding with my 14-year-old, there's nothing in the world other than where's his next food coming from? So, you know, that'll bring kids in. Like, let them come for some pizza and some soda. You know, it doesn't always have to be so structured. So thank you for what you're doing. Really appreciate it. We have to surge this now. We are in a crisis, and it's time for us to do everything we've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the conversation and all the work that has gone into this. There's obviously a lot happening, but we are, as was just stated, we're in a crisis with our kids. And it is a crisis that follows a crisis. And, it's, current traumatic stress followed by, or built upon post-traumatic stress, and it's only going to get worse. And it's only going to build from here. And so these interventions are critical, and they're going to continue to be critical. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think these challenges are going to get a lot worse before they get a lot better. And so I think we need to be prepared for that, and I think we should be treating this like we treated the pandemic, with that level of urgency and that level of a willingness to coordinate and collaborate and do things that we wouldn't have otherwise done. And so I just wanted to build off, to a certain extent, what Councilmember Navarro was talking about earlier about scalability, because I think that is a really key piece here. The first question is, how many people do we think, all of these programs that we talked about today, how many kids do we think that those in total reach? Do we have any projection or estimate today of how many kids we're actually reaching with the programs we've discussed that are currently in place?
For HHS, I can tell you that's a very hard number to pin down, because Street Outreach Network is working in the community, and there are the kids that they will be working directly with, but there will be dozens of other kids whose lives they will touch. So in any given moment, it's hard to tell precisely what we're talking about for most of our programs. Linkages, programs like that, we can talk about the numbers of people, and some of our contract providers, we can also share that. But across the whole county, it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, for for recreation, between all of our summer camps, our youth employment, our regular employment, not just TeenWorks, but we're the largest employer for young people in all of our summer camps, as well as our ongoing sports programs, Her Time to Shine, our volleyball program, softball. We're probably talking about 12 to 15,000 of that are engaged during the summer. Do I think we can do better in the older age group? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the question is, how many should we be reaching? And I think the question of scalability, I'm not sure we know that answer right now, but I think we got to figure it out. We got to figure it out very quickly, and then figure out, where are we falling short and how do we fill those gaps? Because up to this point, I'm not sure if we know, is 12 or 15,000 good, or is it not as good as it needs to be? I imagine, just based on the number of young people that we have in Montgomery County Public Schools, which aren't even all of our kids, that, there are a lot more kids that we, could be and should be reaching. So, I think it would be helpful if there is a way, and I understand some of the programs are harder than others, and not every touch is the same. Consistent engagement in a summer program is much different than somebody who shows up to one event for pizza. Both are important. They reach perhaps different people, but they're not the same. But to have some type of quantifiable understanding of what are we doing now, and where do we need to go, and then how do we scale to the point that Councilmember Navarro was making earlier, I think is really critical. So I would just ask if there's a way for us to come up with that and perhaps come back or continue this conversation in whatever capacity we do. The other question is about the integration. My first question I was going to ask about how integrated the programs are within. I know you all are integrated and coordinating and having meetings, but are we really doing the type of soft handoffs and the institutionalized integration within the programs, or are we not quite at that level of work? Like, how does that work between the rec programs and the HHS programs and the MCPS programs?
So I think that's one of the reasons we pulled together this group. Dr. Starter talked about the opioid intervention team, the OIT team, as a model for what we're trying to do here. I think that's the piece that we have never really pulled together in quite the same way. And a piece of that is so that we can make sure we are communicating and sharing information. We've had a positive youth development team that has worked across this group and MCPS for some years to make sure we're sharing information about what resources are available and getting people enrolled, getting youth enrolled. Safe assumption that we don't have enough of that capacity, and that we will do more to expand that group of folks that are engaged in that process of communicating and sharing resources. That's part of our task for this summer and for the foreseeable future.
The only thing I'd add to Dr. Kroll said is there's at least there's multiple tiers of conversations happening right now. There is the level that we've talked about, which is the strategic level, which many of the partners that you see at the table are included at. But then there's the operational level where Mr. Cardona is working directly with the district level police staff, for example, and the recreation director in that community. And so that we've got several of those programs started where we're actually looking at replicating at the regional service center level, so there's more in the community level. And so that's where those interfaces that you're alluding to are occurring in the sense that it's at the program level. Someone comes in through a program in a particular location, they can transition to the counterpart in HHS, for example, in that particular program. And so at the level that we're having it, we have a strategic level because we need to make sure that we're prioritizing resources and getting focused and building out the data sets and doing the evaluation that we need to do, as Ms. Treadvance alluded to. But obviously at the street level, to put it down to the lowest level, that's where those handoffs are more commonly occurring. And the model that we've developed, as Dr. Kroll alluded to, is based on our opioid experience, which we've had great experience with having a strategic level conversation overlay an operational level experience.
I would add one thing about this, just as an example of this. When the incident at Plumgar took place last year, it was one of those moments where we pulled together the Street Outreach Network, engaged the community initially, but followed very rapidly by the Crisis Center office, our children, youth, and families, emergency support services, our housing teams, and community providers that began to come together to coordinate at the street level what needed to happen for the families and for the communities to make sure we were working to keep a lid on things and try to promote some safety. So it does happen at that level. The challenge now is how do we orchestrate that into a clear best practice model and a best practice process to make sure that all of our providers are routinely doing that for wherever things happen across the county.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Juana was noting this earlier, but I just want to dig into it quickly. That level of integration that is just now beginning, which is going to take some time to work through, is that same level of coordination happening on a regional level to the extent that we're doing it here between various, it's not just police, I know that there's public safety coordination, that's good, it's important, but I think we need a lot more positive youth development coordination because young people who are having problems in DC and Virginia and other jurisdictions around Maryland. They're coming here with those problems. Our folks are, going there. I mean, they don't focus on the borders of the county like we do. which are really political distinctions. Is there any level of coordination that's happening in that regard?
Not to the degree that happens within public safety. And I'm glad you alluded to that, because I think within public safety, that's a common regularity. But when I talked to COG last week, and we suggested they bring together a violence summit, it was specifically focused on the health and human service related activities, even more so than the public safety. Although the public safety and HHS need to be integrated in delivery anyway, and so it is not occurring at the regional level to the same extent. Now, our partnerships, for example, with the district may be better than our partnerships with Loudoun County, for example, just because we have more common interface with them. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be as effective with Loudoun County or Prince George's County or even Fairfax, given that, as you said, it's not just borders, it's the regionality of the National Capital Region. So
you just have to look at the incidents, and you can see that it is not exclusive to Montgomery County.
Correct.
Young people who are caught up in these issues, and oftentimes there's multiple individuals who are involved, and they're all from different places. So that level of coordination, I think, is really important. If we can, really implore COG to lead that effort, and we have several of our colleagues who are very actively involved in that, I think would be helpful. Okay, I just want to pivot to the budget question that we talked about before. I appreciate that you think you have the wherewithal within the budget, and that's good. It gives you some flexibility over the summer. I would hope that you would proactively keep us informed of what your plans are so that we don't get caught by surprise later in the year of something that had already happened. But I think it's helpful to have that flexibility to be able to move forward. But I hope that we can have that proactive, informing of the council, given our budget authority, just to make sure that we are here ready to help and deploy resources if needed. We have several people here who are formerly in the positive youth development space. You have, Council President and I are both chair of the Collaboration Council. I mean, everybody here is committed to these issues. So I just wanted to note that.
Ms. Gal, Ms. McGuire, and Ms. Farag are invited to our youth harm intervention team meetings, and so they will be in the conversations as we are having them, and certainly, as we look at the budgetary implications longer term, they will be privy to them, and we will make sure that you're well aware of, even as we're beginning programs that will have additional cost impacts, we'll make sure to inform the council.
Appreciate that. I hope staff will keep us informed. Appreciate that. And I'll just note to the scalability comments that we were talking about earlier, those budget decisions have to be made now. And so I'm hoping, I think some of this, even the ARPA funding that we talked about earlier that I had suggested really, I think more appropriately should have been part of the operating budget. We've got to start including this in the operating budget now from the conversations that you're having today about next year and next summer of really scaling this up. So I hope that is part of the question. Okay, last piece on MCPS. The wellness centers is really what you have focused on, which seems to be kind of the center of many of these issues, which is great, and I appreciate the leadership of Councilmember Navarro and this council really stepping up to provide resources to scale. I've been following that a little bit. It seems that there's one contractor that's going to be hired to build out these facilities, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly, and then understanding if there's only one contractor, how quickly can we move forward to do these types of expansions of the facilities? And in the absence of facilities, or as we're awaiting those facilities, how do you foresee the wellness centers being used to coordinate some of these efforts with and through the schools?
So, council member, I'm going to have to let you know that I will have to get information to get back to you on the contractor question. I don't have that available for me right here, right now, but I can speak to as a former educator in Northwood High School, where there was a wellness center, as principal formerly at Richard Montgomery High School. I can walk you through what that would look like in the absence of a space, right? So my understanding is there would be portable classrooms or portable spaces that would be added in the interim until these are built out permanently. What we would do is we partner with our school facilities team, school-based leadership, and people from the Office of Student Family Support and Engagement in collaboration with HHS to identify spaces in those high schools. And this is a priority for the district in concert with the council. And so those spaces would be identified. And normally they're identified either by the counseling office or the health room. for a temporary solution. So there is space. You can find space in the high schools, although we know about some of the overcrowding. But that would be most likely, as I sit here before you without the information in front of me, the process that we would utilize to identify spaces until and if there's a contracting problem with the portable classrooms that are to be added.
Appreciate that. If you could share that plan with us, we get a lot of questions about this. In a positive way, the Wellness Center's got a lot of interest from community members, and so we're getting a lot of questions. If you could share with us what the plan is, specifically school by school, how those decisions are going to be made, on a macro level, but also on a micro level, I think that would be helpful. Last question, then I'll yield back. The 30 school psychologists that you noted earlier that we added funding for, that there's funding, I believe federal funding, but where are we on hiring the 30 additional 12-month school psychologists?
So if Mr. Davis has the exact numbers at his disposal, I'll pitch it to him. But I will say up front, and in full transparency, we have continued to have problems filling those positions. By my last count, again, without the numbers directly in front of me, in total, across the district, okay, so this isn't just these additional 30 positions, my understanding is there was 24 or 5 open positions. And I can say to you is we are working, work that's literally on my desk back at CESC is to engage with our budget office and with human resources to ensure that we have competitive salaries out of the gate for our psychologists and social workers. So there are a lot of conversations that need to occur in terms of salary lanes and structures that may be innovative and different as opposed to lumping in some of the professionals with our teacher salary lane. So that is certainly a hot button issue, but we need to be more competitive in that space, but we are still, at this time, having trouble finding all of staffing for all of those positions. I don't know if you have the exact numbers, Mr. Davis?
I don't have the exact numbers, but what I can share, just in addition to what Mr. Monteleone shared, it's a combination of recruitment and also retention. He identified some of the challenges that we're currently facing, but it's also looking at the current members. I know I mentioned in my comments earlier about the 10-month that we currently have. Several of them, in fact, the vast majority of them have expressed interest in converting to 12 months. So it's also our current staff, retention for the current staff that we are.
Appreciate that. We understand this is a national crisis. We don't have enough mental health professionals in our country. We don't have enough nurses in our country. We got to figure this out. The pandemic has exposed a lot of those. But if perhaps before we come back on the 26th, if you could just give us an update on where you are on hiring and then what your plan is to address that, because that is, really at that point we'll basically know what you're going to have to start school, more or less. If you've hired by the end of July, they'll likely be in place by the middle of August, give or take. So thank you very much. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, as most of the questions I had were asked by colleagues, but I'd like to end, if I am in fact the last speaker, on a positive note. As we're talking about positive youth development, as we're talking about creating safe spaces for kids, not only during the summer but year-round, Council President and I had the honor of attending the ribbon cutting just last week for the MoCo Reconnect Center, and want to elevate that for everybody. It's taken a long time to create a drop-in center here in the county. And I remember years ago, way before I joined the council, speaking with Elijah Wheeler, who now, years later, is the executive director of Collaboration Council. We talked about creating a space like this. And it was hard. It was hard for them to find space. It was hard for them to get a landlord to agree to rent out space for individuals of various backgrounds, and providing services that landlords might not otherwise want in their facilities. But we persevered, and this space is an incredible place in downtown Wheaton. And I share that not only so that more people are aware of it, and that we can spread the word about the programs and services that that facility and that partnership provides for young people aged 16 to 24, but it is a sign that we just have to continue working harder to provide these services. and that we have to work within county government, outside county government, and quite possibly with the philanthropic community. Wherever we need to go to make our kids feel safe and welcome, we have to do. And the fact that it took 6 years to create one facility in downtown Wheaton shows us how much more work we have to do to create spaces across the entire county to keep everybody and their families healthy and safe. So very good conversation, much more conversation to be had, much more work to be done, but we have to do it for all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. This is going to be part of an ongoing discussion throughout the year because this is so critical. And so this was intended to be an update on what's happening this summer, which obviously and importantly is connected to the services that we will be providing year-round. Just to put a finer point on this, I just did a search in my email box here, and there have been over 15 reported cases of, at some point or another, children between the ages of 10 and 17 that have been reported missing. And those numbers are on the rise and connected to what we are seeing. That coupled with this gun culture that is seeming to permeate and becoming an increasing problem across the board is just stark. And so this will need to be the priority that it obviously has been based on this presentation. And I'll end with this thought as well. The community building aspect of this is critical. So I was really happy to hear that you all are going to be doing something in the upper part of the county, and more than 70 stakeholders are going to be participating in a facilitated discussion. Because obviously the county government's in among the better positions to be able to convene, help provide programs, services, provide those wraparound services. But this has to be a holistic and community-based approach for it to be long-sustaining. That's what we've done in the past. That's what we'll need to do now through this summer into the following year, and then at some point be able to implement the Kennedy Cluster Project, as Councilmember Navarro noted, with fidelity. But it's all there. We just have to maintain it as a priority. So thank you all very much for coming today. This is exactly what I was hoping for and very helpful. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4 and the introduction of bills. This is an introduction at the request of the county executive to Bill 1822, noise control, leaf removal with amendments. I believe Ms. McCartney Green is staffing this, or maybe Ms. Wellens.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Mr. Council President and council members. Pinch hitting for Ms. McCartney Green today. Yes, Bill 1822 would prohibit the sale of a combustion engine-powered handheld backpack or walk-behind leaf blower or leaf vacuum. The prohibition would take effect 6 months after the bill becomes law, and this is framed as a noise control regulation. That's essentially what the bill does, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. I'll just note a couple things. The public hearing is scheduled for the fall, and there will, as there always is with bills, there will be a racial equity analysis as well as a fiscal note and analysis on this particular bill. So with that, this bill is now officially introduced. That takes us on to item number 5, which is call of bills for final reading. The first bill is 622, Recreation, Montgomery County Sports Commissions as established. We had a joint committee session to discuss this bill, and we made several amendments, some of which I will highlight here, and there's one that I will be proposing from the floor that's important, but not hopefully a huge deal. So as was noted, this bill is important to help coordinate and consolidate the efforts around youth sports participation and sports participation period across generations in Montgomery County. OLO analysis confirmed that there is a discrepancy in youth sports participation, which is often based on a number of factors, the principal of which is the economy. But we did propose going from 23 to 17 members. We added a number of representatives, ex officio representatives, one more of which I will propose in a second, to represent county agencies who are directly involved in the dissemination of sports participation in the county. And we also changed the name to the Montgomery County Sports Advisory Committee as opposed to Commission. And we work to ensure that the mission of this important work is clear. And so I'm very excited about this. I think this is, over the long run, going to lead to literally the level of the playing field and provide more sports opportunities, which we know have so many different benefits for our children, youth, and families, and again, people of all generations. I would like to make one motion that we add one ex officio member, which is a representative from the Department of Health and Human Services, to serve on the body. If I could, okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present and virtual. So with that, can I get a motion to move this joint committee recommendation for final vote as amended? Moved by Councilmember Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Rice. And so
It's a
this
roll
will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Joando?
Yes.
Mr. Joando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. And Mr. Almanos?
Yes.
All right. All right, so that bill is now officially in, and let the record show that passed unanimously. That takes us to Bill 522, Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors membership. I'll turn it over to the chair of the Fed Committee to make any opening comments, and Ms. Wellens to provide any additional technical support.
We had a good committee session about this bill. Not too much to say here. I'll ask council staff to just very briefly characterize it as a fairly administrative procedure here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill was requested by the county executive. The Fed Committee unanimously recommended the enactment of Bill 522 with amendments. The bill addresses the makeup of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. It increases the number of voting members of the board from 11 to 13. It provides that the immediate past chair of the board would continue on as a non-voting ex officio member to provide some continuity. It also adds as an ex officio non-voting member the CEO of the county's workforce development organization. The Fed Committee, at the request of MCEDC, voted to make this an expedited bill in order to, so that MCDC can immediately start to benefit by the membership of the past chair and the other changes. However, the committee agreed that the bill, although the bill should be expedited, they specified that the two new members of the board, the 11 to 13, those two new voting members, should be appointed on or after January 1, 2023. The amended bill, the Fed Committee's version of the bill, is attached at Circle 1 of your packet.
Great. I don't see any other questions. Oh, Councilman Rice.
So I just had a quick question about the board of directors, because I know that we had a member of Institute of Higher Ed on there before with Montgomery College, and I noticed that that then transitioned off, but we don't have anything that's listed as a part of that. So I was just wondering if that was part of the conversation about higher education as part of the composition of the economic development, especially since they play an integral role when it comes to economic development.
Councilman Friedson.
Yeah. Yeah, so appreciate the question. So, like as before, there's somebody, a representative from Montgomery College could be one of the additional two, or any of the seats as part of it. With this, Montgomery College and University of Shady Grove are not included as ex officio non-voting members. The executive branch, the council, and WorkSource Montgomery are ex officio non-voting members, but there certainly are opportunities, and in fact, there's been prior interest also with USG of participating and being appointed as a voting, regular member as part of the regular. There'd be more opportunities to do that with the expansion here, which is one of the discussions that's taking place, from my understanding.
So my suggestion would just be this: that when you come back in January and you make that decision, that you certainly want to prioritize that as a part of it. Higher ed plays an integral role, as we all know, and so it's really important for us to have that representation on the board. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joanna?
Yeah, I'll just add for context, we didn't speak about this specifically, but we've had a similar conversation in the context of WorkSource Montgomery, who was also formerly a voting member, not now, and I raised that issue. But I think it's a good point you bring up about the college. And, they certainly, not just Montgomery College, but all of our institutions of higher education are integrally important in this role. So I think let's look at it, see how it goes, and then see who's appointed to those other positions, and then I think we can go from there. But certainly want to agree with you that that's important. That's really important that they're engaged.
Great. So we have a bill as recommended by the Fed Committee without any additional amendments, so we can go straight to the roll call vote.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Joando?
Yes.
Mr. Joando votes yes. Mr. Reamer? Yes. Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Hooker votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes.
All right, so Bill 522 passes unanimously. That moves us on to item number C, which is expedited Bill 922, property tax credit, elderly individuals and retired military service members as amended. Do you want to describe this one?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So this expedited bill 922, would expand the county's current property tax credit that is available for individuals 65 years or older who have lived in the same dwelling for the preceding 40 years. And it's also available to individuals 65 years or older who are retired members or surviving spouses of an individual who served in the U.S. Armed Forces, Military Reserves, or National Guard. So this property tax credit is currently available for 5 years, and that was consistent with the state enabling legislation. But during the most recent 2022 General Assembly session, the General Assembly has enabled the county and other jurisdictions to expand that credit. So now the 5-year limitation is no longer in effect. What this bill would do would be to expand the credit so that it becomes a 7-year long credit. And it is expedited given that, property tax bills are, being produced probably as we speak. And Director Coveyou of Finance has indicated that with the passage of this expedited bill, his team will be able to proceed with having the credit provided on a continuous basis. And it will affect about 5,000, I believe it will affect about 5,000 residents, benefit them in the coming year. I don't believe that there were any amendments for consideration. Given the expedited nature, this did go straight to the full council, but there was some discussion, as you'll recall, during the public hearing with Mr. Coveyou. Happy to try to answer any questions. Thank you. Oh, and this will need a motion since it didn't go to committee.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Wellens. I think the nature of the credit itself remains the same. The difference is the 5 to 7 years. And as we know, with our aging population being the fastest growing demographic in the county, it's important that these 5,000 plus residents not miss out on this opportunity, hence the expedited nature of the bill. So I don't see any questions or comments from colleagues. Can I get a motion to moved by Councilmember Katz, seconded by Councilmember Friedson? Let's go to the roll call vote.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Joando?
Yes.
Mr. Jawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Friesen votes yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes.
All right, so Bill 922 passes unanimously. That takes us on to item number D, which is expedited Bill 1522, Special Capital Improvements Project Legislation Authorization, Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center Building Envelope Improvement, P721503. Mr. Levchenko, did you want to tee this one up?
Sure. This item, 5D and 5E, are both special capital improvement projects legislation. This legislation is required both in the county charter and the county code for certain capital improvement projects that have locally funded costs above a certain threshold. That threshold for FY23 is $20.35 million. So the item 5D is the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center Building Envelope Improvement Project. As with the 5E project, which is the 6th District Police Station, both were already approved by the council this past CIP cycle. So what you're seeing before you is the required legislation based on what the council's already gone through in terms of its approval process. The projects were introduced a few weeks ago, and we had a public hearing last week on this. The one note I will mention on this one is subsequent to the staff pack you had before you, we did get a racial equity and social justice impact statement from our Office of Legislative Oversight on the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center Building Envelope Improvement Project. And it identified a couple of issues that are sort of ongoing concerns for the county in terms of the capital improvements program. It looked at the geographic area served by the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center, and it also looked at the general contracting environment for the county's capital improvements projects, and identified some equity issues with both of those, and does recommend going forward that the county do an equity assessment during its CIP process, which we do have we are working on that, and it's been a work in progress for the last couple of years. And also look at its contracting process and ways to improve the minority participation in the contracting process. So we can certainly discuss that impact statement more if you'd like today. But before you have this special capital improvements project for the Kennedy Shriver building. I will note that it is already, it was mostly fully appropriated already, and the council added some final appropriation to it this year. So it's been in the approved CIP for some time and represents important renovation work for this particular facility.
Thank you. I think it's a good suggestion to take up at a later date, looking exactly into those decisions and how they're made. On this specific project, it's one I'm pretty familiar with. They have been putting Band-Aids on that facility for over 15 years, and the deterioration is stark, and that facility serves tens of thousands of residents annually, and so this is an important project to be able to move forward. I'm excited about it. I don't see any other questions or comments from colleagues, so this is a roll call vote. But it requires a motion since it did not go through committee. So can I get a motion to accept expedited Bill 1522? Moved by Councilmember Friesen, seconded by Council Vice President Glass. Don't see any other questions or comments, and so let's go to the roll call vote.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Jawando?
Yes.
Mr. Jawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer? Yes. Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Friesen votes yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. And Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes.
So Bill 1522 passes unanimously. That takes us on to item number E, which is expedited Bill 1622, Special Capital Improvements Project, 6th District Police Station, P470301. Mr. Levchenko, in his introductory comments, included his comments about this bill as well. So I don't see any questions or comments from colleagues. I do need a motion to Moved by Councilmember Rice, seconded by Councilmember Katz. Let's go to the roll call vote.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Dewanto?
Yes.
Mr. Dewanto votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes.
All right, let the record show that Bill 1622 passed unanimously as well, which takes us on to item number 6, which is the consent calendar. I'll just make a brief note. We've obviously spent many hours discussing the Police Advisory Board, and I do want to, on behalf of the council, express our appreciation to the 9 men and women who came and responded to our questions last week. It was clear to me, as it was to all of my colleagues, that each of these members understand the critical nature of this work and the importance of impartiality and the bridge that it will hopefully connect between law enforcement and our community and vice versa. So we just appreciate everyone's willingness to step forward, and I'll note, have met the deadline to be able to implement this important work by July, which many other jurisdictions have struggled with. So we will be able to get this work going and going quickly. I don't see any other questions or comments. Councilmember Rice.
Just very quickly, I just want to applaud my colleagues, but also the community, because it is very apparent from what we see that the Up County is very well represented as a part of the Police Accountability Board. And so for so much assumptions that the Up County is not engaged and involved, we see it here in their role in the Police Accountability Board. And I really appreciate everyone for really looking at those kinds of things also to make sure that we have representation from across the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Can I get a motion to accept the consent calendar? Moved by Councilmember Juando, seconded by Council Vice President Glass. No other comments. All those in favor of the consent calendar, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present and virtual. Great, so that is it for the morning, colleagues. We will now recess and reconvene on the 4th floor to meet with our colleagues and friends with the Maryland Association of Counties for lunch. Thank you all very much. And we will be back at 1:30 for public hearings.
Yoga training, so I did my